Who wouldn't want to be Iron Man, or Ironheart for that matter? I mean, I'd rather be Spider-Man, but getting a chance to fly around the world in a billion-dollar piece of armored tech sounds like an absolute dream. The Marvel character that launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe has made appearances in video games in the past, but largely as a brawler, punching and blasting his foes into the ground. Camouflage, the studio behind 2013's Republic, takes its superhero game in a bold direction by making it exclusive to Sony's PlayStation VR. And to my surprise, they have done wonders building a fully realized, story-driven action game that makes great use of the PSVR equipment. And now, thanks to the power of virtual reality, you too can live the life of the world's most favorite billionaire playboy philanthropist. Iron Man VR dances inside and out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, likely out of licensing concerns. You're not controlling Robert Downey Jr., but a reasonable facsimile that walks and talks like the Hollywood actor. Familiar MCU characters and elements like Pepper Potts, Friday, S.H.I.E.L.D., and Tony's Malibu Mansion are present, but tweaked in just such a way so no one can litigate. While this is hardly an issue, how cool would it have been if Sony gave Camouflage the money to pursue the cast? Going into the game, I was expecting something along the lines of an above-average VR experience you might find at The Void. However, Iron Man VR offers a level of gameplay and narrative depth not often seen or done as well in other VR games. Tony Stark, fueled by a vigor earned after surviving a kidnapping that led him to adopt his new superhero persona, takes charge of his legacy by pledging Stark Industries will halt all government weapons production and instead become a force for good. 5 years later, Tony is attacked by his own decommissioned drones that have been taken over by Ghost, the enigmatic hacker with a long history in Marvel Comics, although this iteration is much closer to the one featured in the film Ant-Man and the Wasp. Angry at Stark because of the lives his weapons took, Ghost instigates a campaign of sabotage and destruction aimed at bringing our newly introspective hero to his knees. The hunt for Ghost plays out across 15 chapters that see Tony traveling to different hotspots around the world to halt the villain's plans and protect people from danger. Instead of having the player engage in one action scene after the other, Camouflage gives the story some room to breathe through quieter moments set inside his mansion and mission-critical interiors that require a more hands-on investigation. Movement during these sections is limited to teleporting to and from hotspots that lead to tables, cabinets, and virtual tabletops holding all kinds of interactive knickknacks and doodads. There's very little work the player is responsible for besides the occasional bit of interaction, like pushing a button or punching a panel, as these areas are often reserved for delivering exposition. Tony's Mansion, on the other hand, is one of a few in-game spaces that received a lot of time and attention because there's so many things to touch, grab, throw, and push around. I've grown to appreciate the respite in the mansion because when the shooting starts, there is little time for goofing around.
All systems online.
Just in time. I got a plane to catch.
You can't outrun your past, Stark.
The most well-realized aspect of Marvel's Iron Man VR is the open-air flight and combat experience. I've played my fair share of PlayStation VR games since its launch in 2016, and I have a hard time thinking of another action game that's nearly as fine-tuned as this. Camouflage has done a fantastic job of incorporating the PlayStation Move wands in a way that really makes you feel like Iron Man. The wands become the armored repulsor gauntlets that control the suit's flight direction and fire offensive blasts of energy. Moving around in the air is as simple as manipulating both hands in the direction you want to go, tapping the trigger button occasionally for a quick burst of speed or to perform an evasive maneuver. And because the PlayStation camera provides for one-to-one movement tracking, steering ends up feeling really fluid and surprisingly natural. Flying around a given stage is pretty fun, especially with that sweet Stark UI filling up your periphery vision, but blowing up stuff is far more entertaining. Using Tony's basic repulsor weapons is as easy as putting your palms up and forward while twisting your hand down at the wrist activates the wrist-mounted secondary weapons, like cluster bombs, guided rockets, and autocannons. The control scheme is awesome and works wonders, but does take some time getting used to. The first hour will have you feeling like you're recreating Tony's initial tests from the first Iron Man film as you bounce around and crash into solid objects, but it gets easier and more fun over time. Furthermore, there are systems in place to help you out, such as being able to steer with one hand while defending yourself with the other, and a hover mode that lets you concentrate on dishing out repulsor-based justice without unceremoniously falling to the ground. Calling Iron Man VR a flashy shooting gallery ignores the style and panache camouflage put into making you feel like a superhero. Combat engagements are lengthy and feature some fun bits of interactivity like punching in control panels, defusing bombs, and ripping open the hangar doors on a shield helicarrier. Your performance in the game's action-oriented chapters is measured against various benchmarks that award up to 5 research points per level. When the mission ends, you're sent back to the mansion to spend points on weapon and defense upgrades. You're welcome to repeat any previously played stage in the game to earn better scores and partake in various challenges set up by Friday and Tony's old weapons AI system called Gunsmith that tests your newfound skills in races and gauntlets against Camouflage's best times, some of which are absolutely absurd. The Iron Man suit can be customized further with 8 paint schemes that unlock as you complete various passive objectives. Unfortunately, neither of these schemes look all that great. I'd rather have cosmetic upgrades that turn the Iron Man suit into different iterations seen in the movies and comics, and yet that wouldn't wholly matter either because it's not like you can actually see yourself wearing these different designs. From a technical standpoint, Marvel's Iron Man VR runs like a dream and stands as one of the best looking PSVR games available on the platform. Environments show detail, as do the character models that, like Tony, show some connection to their MCU counterparts. The screen door effect that comes up frequently in VR games on this particular platform is barely noticeable. I'm sure it looked fantastic on PC-enabled VR headsets, but for the PlayStation 4, this is probably one of the more better performing titles. Adding to that is the excellent tracking of the PlayStation camera, which outside of a few minor incidents, had no problem keeping up with my constantly moving head and hands. So many VR games are strict about the player staying within a very specific space before the out of play area warning pops up, but this was never a problem. Great as all of this is, there is a big caveat. Iron Man VR suffers from an overabundance of lengthy load screens that are an absolute pain to sit through. The game loads on startup, it loads when starting off from checkpoints, and has to load every scene transition. At the end of the day, a significant portion of the game is spent waiting around in black voids or staring at the mission screen as a load counter slowly ticks its way up to 100%, a process that can take sometimes up to a minute to finish. And there's only so much you can do while waiting, which is nothing at all. You can manipulate the tooltip windows and view suit unlock progress, but that stays interesting for only so long. It got to a point where my excitement to play this game was quickly tempered by the notion that a good 30% of my playtime would be spent standing around doing nothing. Even with these painful loading issues, Marvel's Iron Man VR is a great technical showpiece for the PlayStation VR. If there's to be a swan song for Sony's experiment in virtual reality, as no word has been given that the PlayStation 5 will host a newer iteration of the headset, then this game is it. The camera tracking works wonders, the control system is pitch perfect, and seeing yourself getting better at flying and shooting the more you play is a fun thrill, especially when the story escalates into extremely mobile boss encounters. The game's story is interesting, and I like how it builds tension between Tony and his allies. On the other hand, I didn't like how the pacing of the story stops dead in its tracks, so that Friday and Gunsmith can send you off to race through checkpoints or fight waves of enemies for no other reason than to pad the time. All faults aside, Iron Man VR deserves to be part of a PlayStation VR owner's library because of how well it incorporates the functionality of its equipment. Plus, it's really cool to be Iron Man. DarkStation gives Marvel's Iron Man VR 4 stars.
Oh, close. Of course I do well when no one's watching. Nice. Mulligan? Oh, whoops! I should get a trophy for this.